Good morning. Welcome to Role Play Cafe. This will be a recap of last night's Symbaroum session. The Butcher of Blackmoor, David ran us in that. Sorry, I'm going through my Symbaroum notes from all our sessions and stuff. This is our fifth session. Again, we're rotating GMs. I've done two. Dell's done one. This will be David's second. We did record it. Dell made a brilliant intro for the video, and I've been trying to get it. I've been trying to cut it together. Unfortunately, the file ends up too big, and it ends up, for some reason, it's messing up the time. Anyway, long story short, I can't render the darn thing without it slowing the video and the sound. By the end of the video, it's like everything's frozen. That's the rendered video. So we're probably just going to upload the recorded actual play session. That's technical stuff, and I just don't have the software, or it's my computer. I don't know which. I cannot re-render the recording with Dell's intro. So I don't know how we're going to do that. Anyway, this is Symbaroum, the actual Free League original game. This is not D&D's 5th edition setting. This is not the setting books for D&D 5th edition. This is Symbaroum. All right, so David's second run. This was supposed to happen around Halloween, and unfortunately, I ended up finding out late that we had family coming in, and I had to cancel. So we had to postpone this a week, which is fine. I mean, the reason it was a murder, kind of a murder mystery, but I think it is. I mean, you could do a murder mystery anytime, but I think that was kind of David's theme for Halloween, kind of do a murder mystery, and which is cool, right? And here's the thing: I've never played Call of Cthulhu. I rarely have run mysteries in general. I mean, for me, fantasy exploration of dungeons and of hexes and of that to me is all mysterious. That's all mystery. That's just the nature of that's enough mystery for me as a player, but certainly as a GM. So I've never run an actual mystery session, really. I mean, I might have tried. I've run lots and lots of games, lots of sessions. Somewhere along the line, maybe I did, and I certainly, as a player, have not had really. I think the Delta Green game that Justin ran for us was the closest thing for me to Call of Cthulhu, and the closest thing I've been in kind of a mystery game, a murder mystery game. So I was, in a way, very cool. I'm looking forward to this, right? This idea of actually investigating a crime scene and then following the trails to hopefully find the culprit, etc. So very cool. And so you wouldn't think, necessarily that you wouldn't think necessarily that Symbaroum would be the first thing you're thinking, but I think it works beautifully. Symbaroum works for this. It's got we have attributes and skills and things. So very cool. So first we have David does a great setup, writes us a short synopsis that there's been these murders occurring in Blackmoor, and it's creating some problems, especially for our boss, our sponsor, our leader, so to speak, the goblin who pays our way, the goblin who ultimately gives us jobs, the goblin Rigel in Blackmoor. And he's most concerned that they're now trying to they may suggest there are foul people that might try to pin this on the goblins, and of course he doesn't want the authorities snooping around the tent city of Blackmoor. So Rigel says, go investigate and stop this, figure out what's going on quickly before we end up with witch hunters and blood mages, and or they turn on us goblins. And of course, Dell's character Shig would certainly be invested in this, as Dell's character is a goblin, right? So he would not necessarily want goblins to become the enemy of the people, so to speak. Of course, Taro is whatever, it's a job. I've been given an order, I'll do it. And Taro, of course, is a ranger. So I figure, as I described, he's just delusional enough that he thinks he could solve this mystery, right? That he thinks he can investigate the wounds and investigate tracks like he would if he was hunting a wolf, a rabid wolf or something, right? So for Taro, he's like, hey man, I've hunt wolves, I've hunt bears, I can hunt people, I can hunt murderers, right? So it's kind of fun. And then of course Todd's character, Cabello, we haven't yet gotten to know Todd's character yet, right? I mean, it's been he's kind of this quiet, I would say mysterious rogue type figure, right? With a little spiritual, maybe a little spiritual bent, but he's playing it very close to the vest, which is cool. Todd's kind of, again, Todd's always been a character player. So, again, we're gonna have to find out as we play, which is fun. Okay. So we got these murders happening in Blackmoor. The latest, the biggest VIP that was murdered was the priest of Prios, and that caused a bit of a stir. That's what got all the authorities a little interested. They murdered basically the father who runs the little temple here in Blackmoor. However, that's not the latest victim. The latest victim is the one that we track over to the place called the Knot. This is where the tents and things get really tight and ugly, and it's like the slums of the slums, so to speak. And it's called the Knot. It's where things are just tight alleyways, etc. And it's a tavern tent, semi-permanent structure, ratty semi-permanent structure called the Bleached Skull Tavern. And we go over there to investigate. That's just outside the tavern, not quite in the alleyway, but just around the corner at night. A gentleman named Heinrich, who works in the mill, a laborer in forestry, lumber, etc. He leaves intoxicated, and at some point in the middle of the night, and he is brutally attacked and murdered in the right outside the tavern there in the dark. And so his body's already been removed. So we investigate that scene. We talk to a couple of goons who are sizing us up. We decide to pay each one a thaler, and Cabela breaks the ice with them, and then my character offers up a thaler to sweeten their tongue a little bit, and also reminds them that wouldn't it be better if the residents of Blackmoor solved this problem instead of the Baron's men or the witch hunters. And we kind of loosened their tongue. They gave us enough. We found out where the body went to the temple, where it would be prepared for proper burials. Shig took off that direction before we were finished, right? Shig went around the tent and investigated around the tent. That was about all we could learn. So we headed off toward the temple. We saw the new father, Father Abe, administering to the poor, feeding the poor, and praying over the poor, and prophesying from the steps of the temple. Ratty Blackmoor temple, for what that's worth. Cabola, I'm so sorry, I can never get this right. Cabello, Todd's character, approaches one of the acolytes and basically lies to him and says, "Hey, Father Abe has us investigating. We need to see that body from the murder the other night," and asks a few questions, finding out also about Father Prios, and that he was not well liked, and he was kind of brutal, and he was heavy-handed, and it wasn't about peace and love. He was more about stick than carrot preaching, right? And David does a good job setting up this, who this guy was. And he vanished, and they're all almost certain, though, he was murdered, although they never recovered his body. So for me, that's a mystery. It's like, how do you know he was murdered if you haven't found his body? So, but they add this young acolyte couldn't have given us any more information. So he takes us in, leads us down into the under the earth, where they could possibly store these bodies in a cooler area, in a closed chamber, which is their embalming room or their prep room. He leaves us alone, and we investigate. We discover some things. We find out that a weapon or a tool was used to remove the eyes, and most of the murder victims had their eyes removed. So that was the common thread that made them believe, okay, we got another problem here. This is not just a murder. There's murders in the slums all the time. That's what's special about this. And they're not tied to just lowly level people. A priest of Prios, that's a pretty serious victim, right? So they're not just murdering whores, prostitutes, and beggars, right? Okay. We discovered that the eyes were removed with a weapon or a tool. We discovered it has a huge crushed in skull. There's an indent of something that stamped it or banged it on this person, Heinrich, on the head. Shig heads over to the mill, where it is ultimately run by goblins, and it's ultimately the major labor of this mill are goblins. He happens to know a goblin boss or foreman, and of course there are humans and things there in Blackmoor work the mill as well. But he's concerned because what we do find out from the three goons is they ultimately despised Shig, and they ultimately hinted that he was the murderer. Not he wasn't, but that his kind murdered is the murderer. So Shig now is like headed for the mill. He wants to nip this in the bud. What do you mean goblins did this? This isn't cool. So Dell's headed to the mill immediately. We go to the temple, and Dell doesn't tell us. I mean, his character just takes off, and that's it's fine. And so we go to the temple. We do this investigation. We find out about this wound. We find out his eyes were removed with a weapon. So in other words, a beast didn't do this. And there's nothing that suggests to Tarot that there's something supernatural in this. That doesn't mean that's true. It could be a supernatural weapon-wielding beast. But, for Tarot's take, it wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a tearing and rending type of wounds. Very cool. So we're investigating, we're learning these things. We upon leaving, Father, again, Cabello lied to the acolyte. Father A bursts in on us, ranting and raving, threatening to have us arrested and removed. How dare we desecrate this body? How dare we come in here without warrant? How dare we do this? And of course, we back our way out. I make a donation of a thaler, and we beg off, and we get out of there before he calls Erebus, who's basically the Baron's captain or the sheriff of Blackmoor here. We take off, and I use my tracking skills to follow Shig, and I'm looking at his tracks, and I know Shig's foot movement. I described that Shig has got a strange gait, a more strange gait now because of his troll smack in the last session. His character was knocked unconscious and almost killed, but he was really badly wounded. He would have needed weeks to recover. And so I described how one of his right foot now is slightly twisted, where he's healed back, maybe kind of with a bone healed back improperly. So I spot his tracks. He also, well, let's say it, he's not indelicate with his feces and his scat. And so I can follow his scat and his footprints, and it leads us to the mill. And we find that he's there interrogating the boss of the mill. His name is Crunk. And he entices Crunk to step off his podium and take a break from commanding and whipping his men, brings him over, and he says, listen, what's going on here? So Shig's able to he's able to wring out of this guy. People are saying goblins are committing these murders, and is this true? And Crunk says the reason they're saying that is goblin scat is found around the bodies. And so at that point, Shig's like, damn, goblins are doing this. And then Crunk says, I didn't say goblins are doing it. I said there's goblin scat around the bodies. Could be goblins doing it, or it could be somebody trying to make it look like goblins are doing it. And so Shig says, I got to go find Taro. And so Shig at this point just abandons him, leaves him standing there among his men, and races off. And as he's coming to find us, he sees that we are being asked by the Blood Robes, or Erebus's men, the Blood Robes, the Baron's kind of police force, which Erebus would be ahead of in a way. I think that's what David said. I can't quite recall. I don't know if I put that in my notes. Anyway, he sees that we're being surrounded by Blood Robes, and they are telling us to put our weapons away as Shig approaches, and that's fade to black. That's part one. So we got to resolve this part two, and it was great fun. I dig it, right? I've never really had a chance to just investigate. Well, I can't say that. I think our Lamentations of Flame Princess, a little mini campaign that I was in with Ivan a few years ago, had a sense of this. There were times I felt like we were on the trail of something. There was a mystery we were trying to uncover, and so I can't deny, in a way, Lamentations, Ivan's Lamentation of the Flame Princess game, with Lee and Josh, had some of these elements where we were, in a way, we were trying to, in a way, solve a thing that we perceived as this great creature that was dangerous, right? If I remember right, it's been years, right? It's been years since that. So, but aside from that, most of the games I've been in as a player, they aren't necessarily investigative games. Again, I think the Delta Green game with that Josh ran for us was definitely investigative. It's a Call of Cthulhu kind of game, right? And fantastic. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit, actually. Again, we have persuasion, we have cunning, and we have vigilance. So we have 3 attributes. The game relies on attributes for all checks. Skills or abilities inform another special thing, or will inform our ability check, etc. So, or give us an automatic. Like, for instance, Dell's character, one of his goblin traits at this level, he can pretty much wring the truth out of any other goblin that isn't on the very highest echelon of difficulty. So he basically just grabbed this goblin boss after he talked to him briefly, and then he realized he wanted more, grabbed him by the throat, kind of pushed him over against barrels or something, and he spilled out everything he knew. And that's a very cool thing. So Symbaroum is perfect for this kind of fantasy dark gaming too. We can do this kind of sleuthing. We can do these kind of non-combat things. Right now, again, I'm assuming this may lead us to a combat, because this thing is brutal, and it is clearly effective. As they said, the screams of Heinrich, by the time they heard him screaming, by the time they got outside the tent and around the corner and found him, all damage was done. Eyes were gone. Blood splattered all over the tent. that fast. So whoever is doing this is obviously competent. And that's what leads people to believe it might be supernatural, something from the Davacar. Our investigation that tools or weapons were used to remove the eyes that inflicted the wounds leads me to believe it's clearly a capable a humanoid type, something with weapons, something that's not an animal, so to speak. Fantastic game, David and Dell and Todd. Again, great fun. I'm loving Symbaroum, but I already knew that, right? I've run quite a few of them locally years ago. And then, of course, I will be running Symbaroum again once we get together locally. I just haven't had time. My life on the weekends has been so crazy that I haven't really been able to reschedule our Symbaroum session. And we're also going to try to do Savage Worlds in that. So I made a little prep because I was preparing a World War II Savage Worlds game, and then Scott released his Task Force Raven for Savage Worlds. It's the perfect tool for this World War II spec ops, right? Occupied France. So I'm learning that. I'm reading his book right now, and I'm prepping for that. I'm not certain I'll be ready by the time we get our session together. I don't know if I'll have, I don't know if I'll be ready to run it just yet. They are interested. They're not really knowledgeable about history and World War II history. So I thought, I don't know, I may have to just run a modern kind of spec ops game for them. I've even thought about using Savage Worlds and do a fantasy game to break it in. You know, they love fantasy as much as I do. So we could just do a Savage World one-off fantasy game, kind of to teach them Savage Worlds. They wouldn't have to sweat the genre. They wouldn't have to sweat understanding military stuff. They wouldn't have to sweat knowing anything about World War II occupied France or something. It would relax everybody as they learn Savage Worlds. So I may just do that with our Symbaroum session. I'll just run a quick one-off Savage Worlds to teach them the game and get them going. The point is, I'm looking forward to running a Savage Worlds game, and I'm certainly looking forward to running Task Force Raven. So very cool. Had a great time. The video will be up. We will decide. I asked Dell if he wanted to try to do it, try to render the whole thing with it, or does he want me to go ahead and upload it? So I'm waiting for Dell to respond to that. And then if Dell wants to take a hand at trying to render the whole thing and put it up, I'll let him do that. If not, I'll go ahead and just upload the AP and people can watch this. We're using Discord. Discord's working okay. David's video was behind his voice at times. He would never leave. He was always with us, but his video was not syncing on my side. Matter of fact, you might see it in my AP. His video would be behind what he was saying. So it was weird. It was like a delay on his video, but his voice was right there with us. He never left. He never stuttered. He never left. The video was kind of off. That's not David's fault. That's I think the browser. That's Discord, right? That's just the weight of turning video on in Discord. We have 4 players, and then we have another empty, and I'm not certain why this is happening on Dell's Roleplay Cafe, but we have another one that is an empty box there. And I don't know why, because Dell's on one, David's on one, I'm on one, Todd's on one, and then we have this empty Roleplay Cafe box. And I think that's related to his trying to stream it live to our channel. But that being there may be eating resources. So we're going to have to figure out a new way to do this Discord thing, because there were times I just felt like I wasn't getting all the data soundly, right? So, and when we do Joth, we do it with no video, and it works great. So Todd runs our Joth games for the most part with no video, and there's no problem. This video just slows. Discord starts to get gummed up. My video going, Dell's video going. So anyway, it was a great game. Symbaroum. I think Dell's running the next one. I've run 2. This was David's second, and then I think Dell is going to run another one. I don't know how long we'll do this. However, we need to finish this first. So Dell's going to have to, he's going to have to wait at least one more session so we can wrap this up. And I do want to resolve this because this is great. And I want to know, and I want to find out. So that's the key, right? Did we enjoy it enough that we want to complete it? Did we enjoy it enough that we want to solve this mystery? Do we want to find out where this goes? Damn straight I do. So thanks, David. Great game. My first real game of kind of murder mystery investigation, even though we're not using a game that's built for that, like Call of Cthulhu, etc., was great. It was great. And I look forward to the next one. What else? That's it. I think that's it. This is my reflections and recap. Not a lot to reflect about. I've said before, I know Symbaroum. Symbaroum is that modern fantasy game for me. I've run it enough. I've read it enough. I've played it enough. There's just nothing to reflect about on the game system. It's great. And although it is dark fantasy, couched in this thing about treasure hunting in the Davakar, we aren't restricted to that. We can be in Thistlehold, Yindarus, we can be in the mountains, we can. So there's plenty of room to stretch your legs in Symbaroum's core book. Absolutely, right? So you don't have to think, oh, we're just going to do expeditions into the Davakar and treasure hunt. No, there's lots of options, tons of options. Dell ran a game again. Ultimately had very little to do with the Davakar, right? I ran a second session, had nothing to do with the Davakar. So we're finding out Symbaroum, we can do anything we want, right? And still have this world, still have the politics, still have the lore. And the great thing is it's setting up for my third session will be an expedition into the Davakar. So by the time David, we finish this one, that's assuming we don't die or give up on Symbaroum. Dale runs his next session. My third session is going to be a straight hardcore Davakar treasure hunt, and we're gonna see that darker, deeper corruption of the Davakar. So I figure my third will be really a more, because they're going to level up. I mean, we're going to be leveling up here at least twice more. So by the time I run my third session, they should be well ready to go a little deeper into the Davakar. Thank you for watching. Good day.